Like, subscribe, and hype the video. Also, leave a comment on any topics you want to hear about in the future. Okay, let's dive in. In our last episode, we walked through what is openly, confirmably documented about the militarization of space, anti-satellite missile tests, gray zone capabilities, the legal framework that permits almost everything except orbital nuclear weapons, and the creation of dedicated military space organizations. All of it publicly acknowledged. Today we're going into the parts that aren't publicly acknowledged, the classified programs that have been partially exposed through declassification, leaks, and investigative reporting, the exotic weapons systems that governments deny exist, and the conspiracy theories that extend well beyond what the evidence can support. This is the part of space militarization where the line between confirmed, suspected, and speculative gets genuinely blurry, and we're going to be honest about exactly where that line falls throughout this episode. Let's start with a program that is completely real, completely confirmed, and still almost entirely unexplained in terms of what it actually does. The X-37B orbital test vehicle is an unmanned, reusable spaceplane operated by the United States Space Force. It looks like a miniature version of the Space Shuttle, roughly 29 feet long with a payload bay that opens in orbit, and it launches atop rockets, operates in orbit for extended periods, and then returns to Earth and lands autonomously on a runway. What makes the X-37B remarkable is its mission duration. Its longest mission to date lasted 908 days, nearly 2.5 years in orbit, before landing in 2022. 6 missions have flown so far, accumulating thousands of days in orbit total. The spacecraft is officially described as a technology demonstration platform for reusable space vehicle technologies and experimenting with various payloads. What those payloads are, what the spacecraft does during its months-long orbital missions, and what operational capabilities it's developing have never been publicly disclosed. Speculation from space analysts and former military officials has centered on several possibilities. Testing sensors for space situational awareness, experimenting with propulsion systems for extended orbital maneuverability, testing technologies for inspecting or interfering with other satellites, or developing capabilities for rapid deployment of military payloads from orbit. None of these have been confirmed. The Air Force and Space Force's consistent response to questions about the X-37B's mission has been that the program is classified. What is not in doubt is that the United States is operating a reusable, long-duration, maneuverable spacecraft in orbit for classified military purposes, and has been doing so since 2010. Like, subscribe, and hype the video, and let's talk about what other nations are doing in the same space. The United States isn't the only country operating classified military space programs with capabilities that go beyond what's publicly described. China and Russia are both active in this space, and the limited information that has emerged about their programs is concerning enough to have driven significant U.S. military investment in space situational awareness, the ability to track and characterize what other nations' satellites are actually doing in orbit. China began flying its own reusable spaceplane, the Shenlong, in 2020, conducting multiple missions of varying durations with classified payloads. Like the X-37B, its actual mission and capabilities are not publicly disclosed, though Chinese state media has described it as a reusable experimental spacecraft for civilian purposes, a characterization that most Western space analysts consider incomplete at best. Russia has operated a series of satellites under the Kosmos designation that have exhibited behaviors consistent with active space situational awareness, or potential anti-satellite missions. In 2019, a Russian satellite deployed a sub-satellite that conducted close proximity operations near other objects in orbit, prompting a formal warning from U.S. Space Command about the behavior. In 2020, a different Russian satellite conducted what U.S. Space Command described as a weapons test, releasing a high-speed projectile in orbit, in a public statement that was unusually specific and direct for an official characterization of a classified adversary space program. The conspiracy theory landscape around space weapons is extensive, and it covers a range of claims from the plausible to the extraordinary. Let's walk through the main ones and where the evidence actually lands. The most common claim is that one or more major military powers has operational directed energy weapons, lasers or particle beams, deployed in orbit and capable of destroying targets on the ground or other satellites at will. This is in the plausible category rather than the confirmed category. Ground-based directed energy weapons are real and have been developed and tested by multiple countries. Space-based directed energy weapons, actually deploying such systems in orbit, are something multiple nations have researched, but no confirmed operational space-based directed energy weapon has been publicly acknowledged by any government. This doesn't mean none exists, particularly given classified programs we've already discussed, but classified programs exist, and orbital laser weapons are operational are different claims supported by different levels of evidence. A second common claim involves the X-37B specifically, that it's being used to deliver weapons from orbit on demand, essentially functioning as a reusable orbital bomber. This is physically possible in principle. An object in low Earth orbit moves at roughly 17,500 miles per hour and can be deorbited to strike a surface target. But the X-37B's publicly known characteristics, including its small size and modest payload capacity, make it a poor candidate for this role compared to purpose-built systems. That said, the classified nature of its actual payloads and missions means this can't be definitively ruled out. Like, subscribe and hype the video, and let's get into the historical precedent that makes some of these theories harder to dismiss than they might otherwise be. Here's the historical context that makes healthy skepticism about classified space programs reasonable rather than paranoid. The history of military space programs is full of examples where capabilities existed for decades before any public acknowledgement. The Corona Reconnaissance Satellite Program operated from 1959 to 1972, conducting over 140 missions photographing Soviet military installations. Its existence was classified until 1995, 36 years after its first launch. During those decades, the program's existence was actively denied or simply not acknowledged in response to public questions. The National Reconnaissance Office, the U.S. government agency responsible for building and operating spy satellites, was itself classified. Its very existence was not officially acknowledged until 1992, despite having been established in 1961. For over 30 years, an entire government agency operating one of the most expensive and consequential space programs in American history was officially non-existent. The MISTY stealth reconnaissance satellite, designed to be difficult to track from the ground, was partially acknowledged only after amateur satellite trackers independently identified it in orbit. These precedents establish something important. Classified space programs do exist, do operate for extended periods without public acknowledgement, and are sometimes more capable than even sophisticated outside observers realize until they're eventually disclosed. So here's where the space weapons picture actually stands, organized honestly by what we actually know at different confidence levels. What is confirmed and publicly documented? 4 nations have demonstrated anti-satellite missile capabilities. Multiple nations operate classified military satellites whose functions are unacknowledged. The United States operates the X-37B spaceplane on long-duration classified missions. Russia has conducted proximity operations with satellites that U.S. Space Command has described as weapons tests. The existing international legal framework permits all of this except orbital nuclear weapons. What is confirmed classified but only partially disclosed? The full capabilities of the X-37B, the Shenlong, and various Kosmos series satellites are not publicly known but are actively monitored by military organizations in multiple countries who have access to classified characterization data. The capabilities being developed in these programs are more than reconnaissance based on the investment and operational patterns, but their exact nature remains classified. What is claimed but not confirmed by evidence? Operational orbital directed energy weapons, space-based kinetic weapons capable of striking surface targets, and various more exotic claims circulating in conspiracy communities. These are physically possible in principle, precedented by decades of research programs, but not currently supported by the kind of evidence that would allow confident confirmation. So here's the honest picture of space weapons today. The militarization of space is real, documented, and accelerating. The classified programs are real, partially confirmed, and more capable than publicly acknowledged. The conspiracy theories that go furthest, orbital weapons platforms capable of striking anywhere on Earth on demand, directed energy weapons destroying satellites at will, aren't confirmed, but they're not physically impossible either, and the historical precedent of classified programs existing for decades before acknowledgement is real enough to make confident denial unwise. What is clear is that space, once described as the province of all mankind in a treaty signed by every major power, has become a contested military domain, and the gap between what's happening up there and what the public is told about it is wider than most people realize. If you've made it through both episodes, let me know in the comments how concerned you are about where this is heading. Like, subscribe, and hype the video, and I'll see you in the next one.